night. We'll discuss this and more of today's top headlines. I'm Celestia Sherman.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also talk with the Deputy Director of Texas Housers, Ben Martin, about the shortage of affordable rental units here in Houston.
Plus, Houston's art scene is growing. We're going to learn all about the Opera Gallery Houston with director Gregory Lahmi.
And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
All this and more right here on Hello Houston, right after the news from NPR and News 88.7.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. We are now more than 2 weeks into a war with Iran. President Trump and his aides are doubling down on the narrative that the U.S. is winning. Trump is working to promote an image of strength against the backdrop of climbing U.S. gas prices, heavy market volatility, and polls consistently suggesting people are questioning the wisdom of a war that could last longer than the administration initially projected. NPR's Frank Ordonez traveled with the president over the weekend in Florida.
Trump is very attuned to the politics of the moment. He can see the polls. He can see how the split among his own supporters who are concerned about this dragging on. And Trump also knows how to employ a strong yet simple language and kind of repeating it over and over again as a rebranding tool.
NPR's Frank Ordonez. Germany is among several developed countries rejecting President Trump's demand to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. NPR's Rob Schmitz has more from Berlin.
President Trump has called on NATO allies in Europe to protect the shipping lane, crucial to providing oil and gas to countries throughout the world. But Stefan Cornelius, a spokesman for German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, says the war has nothing to do with NATO and that for its part, Germany would not help secure the Strait of Hormuz. NATO, said Cornelius, is a defensive alliance for its territory. As the war enters its third week, Iran continues to maintain its stranglehold over the strait. Germany's foreign minister also called on the U.S. and Israel to, quote, clarify when they consider the military objectives of their operation to be achieved. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
In a sign of how the war against Iran is spreading, airlines are starting to add fuel surcharges to ticket prices. NPR's Bill Chappell has more.
The 75% jump is a huge spike in one of air carriers' biggest expenses, and their customers will eventually absorb some of that increase, says Sean Cudahy of the Points Guy website.
Consumers purchasing tickets for the summer will likely feel it. It's just a matter of when and how significant.
He recommends locking in an airfare now and making sure you can change the ticket.
You can also set alert so you get an alert every time the price changes.
But Cudahy adds for international travel, with thousands of flights canceled since the war started, it can be tough to avoid airline hubs in the Middle East, which are some of the busiest in the world. Bill Chappell, NPR News.
2 members of the Iranian women's soccer team are staying behind in Australia, where a top government official says they've been relocated to an undisclosed safe location. 5 other players and a support staff member had dropped their bid for asylum and as of Monday night were flying to Oman and possibly back to Iran. Concerns have been raised about the women's safety back in Iran. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 386 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Some Houston area public school employees say they're seeing a rise in requests for special education evaluations from private school and homeschool families. It's being driven by Texas's new voucher program. To qualify for up to $20,000 in additional voucher funding for students with disabilities, families must provide an individualized education program. The plans outline the support a child needs to succeed in school and can take weeks to complete. But because only public school districts can complete the evaluation, the rush ahead of tomorrow's voucher deadline is straining district staff. Many families will not be able to obtain an evaluation in time. For more on this story, visit houstonpublicmedia.org. A proposed rock and concrete crusher facility in Fort Bend County will not be moving forward after the company withdrew its permit application. This comes after local residents spoke out against it at recent public meetings. News 88.7's Fort Bend County reporter Melissa Inahe has the story.
The company Jewel Pit Inc. was seeking an air quality permit from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality after being rejected last year. The new permit would have allowed extended hours of operation to emit several types of air pollution at a site located less than 2 miles away from hundreds of homes in the Rocheron area. TCEQ officials sent out a notification saying Jewel Pit withdrew its permit application in early March. It was the company's third attempt to build the facility. Talisa Laverne is with Air Alliance Houston, the nonprofit that's been following this case closely with community members.
This outcome did not happen on its own. It happened because residents organized. They asked questions, showed up to meetings, spoke with elected officials, and made it clear that they care deeply about the air their families breathe.
In Fort Bend County, I'm Melissa Nahe, News 88.7.
We reached out to Jewel Pit Inc., but did not hear back. Fuel prices continue to climb. According to AAA Texas, the average price for a gallon of regular gas in Houston is now $3.32 a gallon. That's up from $2.46 a gallon a month ago. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Okay, well,
Hello,
2 out
Houston.
of 3.
Hello, Houston. I know. We were just laughing if you're watching us on YouTube. You know, I think cold weather makes people giggly.
Yes,
You
it
just
does.
feel good.
Especially this cold weather. You know, it's not like super like gloomy and windy. Well, it's very windy, but like
It's crispy.
It's crispy.
And it's not going to last long if you don't like it.
Right.
50s today, 60s tomorrow. But tonight it's going to be down to around 38, 40 degrees. It's going to be chilly.
It was chilly this morning, Frank.
It was around where you live. It was around 44 degrees.
Yeah, that's right.
I know, it's cold. And the wind. Like you could see our camera behind us if you're watching us on YouTube, which I hope you are. We have a nice group there.
Yes.
The wind is shaking that camera now and then. Yes.
All night
We haven't
long.
seen our dogs in 3 days.
All night long, the wind kept me awake because I kept hearing things. And I'd be like, what's that? But it was
Kevin,
just,
too. He kept complaining that the wind was waking him up. Of course, we're in a high rise now. So it bends all the way down. It comes all the way back up and all the way down.
Feel this way?
You can. You can see it. I see
That
it
always
more than.
creeps me out.
I don't really feel it that much, but I see it.
So-
Like the chandeliers. You know? It's like, do we have ghosts or is that just the wind?
That's
Which
just-
with the wind, there's a fire danger. So we're red flag warnings, which is, you know, back in the day, they really did raise a red flag. Now the only time you see that is at the beach.
That's at the beach.
But they really did do that to say, hey, don't burn and all of that. Now they just call it a red flag warning. It just means it's really windy and a fire can get out of control really quickly, so please don't burn.
So-
Speaking of the beach, let's talk about your weekend.
Oh, okay. Well, I have questions, though. I have questions about this front, Frank. So talk to us about, it's kind of late, or is this like the last kind of cool snap we'll see, and then we'll go into...
As you know, April showers bring May flowers.
Okay.
And so hopefully we'll get some because after this front, it's looking pretty dry until April, and we need some rain. We're getting into the drought area a little bit. And so it's not unusual to get a good, strong front in March. Usually April's our best month. Usually April looks like today, but everything's happening earlier. The allergy season has happened earlier. We had very little winter really to speak of.
Right.
Summer happens earlier. We get to 90 early. Have you seen the forecast out in Arizona and California for this week? Triple digits.
Yikes.
Huge heat dome coming off the Pacific.
Okay.
So, and that only happens because waters are warmer than normal, but it looks like it's going to be a very warm summer. So get ready.
I got to tell you, you mentioned the beach.
Yes.
I was out in Galveston this weekend.
Well, so was I, but we were in two different places.
Two different places. And the water was not warm in Galveston. It
No.
was chilly.
We took a long walk on the seawall. It wasn't exactly blue, but it was pretty.
It was very pretty. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lovely weekend. You know, my parents came up from South Texas. We went to Moody Gardens.
Love Moody Gardens.
It was such a great experience, Frank. I have to tell you, what I really enjoyed about it was entertaining, but it was also very much about learning. I feel like we all learned something.
Did you go to the science pyramid?
Yes.
And you could get on the scale and see what you would weigh on the moon, and you're like, oh, yes, 48 pounds.
I was like, this is exactly how much I should weigh. But yes, we had so much fun. It was beautiful. We did the rainforest. We did the aquarium. Highly recommend. What a little gem we have.
We went to Saltwater Grill, which is delicious.
Yes.
And then across the street, the Grand Opera House for the Freddie Mercury One Night of Queen.
How was
Although
that?
it was 2 nights, Friday and Saturday. So we went to the Saturday version. It was great fun.
Oh, I bet it was fun.
Yeah. And then Sunday, had kind of a lazy day, meandered back.
Same.
And then watched the Oscars. We'll talk more about the Oscars. What did you think?
Oscars.
What's your first impression?
I thought Conan knocked it out of the park.
I hate to say that because I don't like him. But you know what? I'm not a fan. I don't think he's funny.
Well,
I think he's silly. I think he's that sort of
he's more
physical
silly,
comedy
kind
that
of,
doesn't really work for me for some reason. But I think he did a great job. I thought the Oscars were great. And I'm glad that that not one movie, I know one did best with 6 awards for one war after the next, whatever it was. But they seem to spread out. Frankenstein won a little bit, and Sinners won a little bit, and Weapons won a little bit.
Huge sweep where it was like, okay,
yeah,
here
like
it is. There it
Titanic
goes.
again. You know?
Right.
Well, so it wasn't a huge sweep, and it just shows you that the industry is diversified. Had a lot of different offerings, and I thought it was kind of nice. Now, it was interesting. Started at 6 o'clock at night.
That was different.
I liked it because I got it out of the way to watch other stuff.
Yeah, and you still had your evening. Usually, I'm still waiting at night to okay, let's wrap this up. I need to go to bed.
It makes sense for them because it was 4 o'clock for them, so they were off to their fancy dinner parties by 8 o'clock.
Fair party, yeah.
So that's good for them. And but I don't know if you heard Conan announce that in 2029, which is only 3 years, it's going to stream. It's not going to be on ABC anymore. It's going to stream, which he said, look, that's the way things are going, and
that's the future.
We'll see what happens. But in a way, even ABC was streaming through DirecTV and my Roku. So I'm already streaming ABC and NBC and CBS as people are streaming us on YouTube and streaming Channel 8 on YouTube or on DirecTV. So we're already streaming everything. I don't really know what that means.
Well, I think that just going directly to YouTube, though, is leaving out a major network like an ABC, NBC.
Well, somebody's going to make money somewhere. I can guarantee you that.
A lot of money will be made. A lot of money.
All right. So it was a big weekend at the rodeo.
Ooh.
We're going to get to that headline. We also are going to be talking with Deputy Director at Texas Housers, Ben Martin, about affordable rental units in the Opera Gallery. We're talking about that.
Yes. The art scene continues to expand right here in Houston.
Yeah, that's always fun. Mm-hmm. And the library downtown, which is gorgeous, 100 years. We're going to talk about it.
It's going to be a lot. So we have a great show coming up for you, but
get to that Saturday night that we've all heard about.
Yeah, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo says it's reviewing security after fights broke out in the carnival area Saturday night, causing panic and forcing the carnival to close early. Videos circulating on social media show large groups fighting in the middle of a crowded midway, with some families running as confusion spread through the entire crowd. Rodeo officials say law enforcement and on-site security responded quickly, and they're now reviewing what happened and looking at steps to prevent similar incidents in the future. But it raises a broader question. When large public events turn chaotic, how should organizers balance safety? How should they balance security and also have the open, family-friendly atmosphere that people expect? What do you think? Now is the time to join us on Hello Houston. You can call or text 713-440-8870.
You know, I saw a video of this cop grabbing, and look, God love them. They're out there trying to figure out what's going on and getting things under control. But he grabbed these 2 short, young ladies by the hair. And they were just cell phoning what was going on. Now, you don't know exactly what's in their hand. I get that. Yeah. You're trying to get everybody out of the way. Hey, grab and threw them to the ground. They weren't throwing any punches. Other videos showed some young men throwing punches in different areas.
There's a lot of video.
There is a lot of video. KHO, you did a good job of covering it.
Yes.
They had one of the reporters that happened to be out there, so they did a great job. But I think the rodeo got it under control. No one was stabbed. No one was shot. No one was hurt. Mm-hmm. Even being now thrown to the ground, you might have had a skint knee, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it was handled. Mm-hmm. But it's always frightening. We don't have a lot of that kind of outbreak here.
No, I think one incident obviously shouldn't define an event that serves hundreds of thousands of people every year, but it does highlight how quickly confusion can happen.
Yes.
And especially in very crowded spaces, and especially in today's social media viral environment.
Yeah.
It feels like there's more hype around these things, and people start getting their phones out, and it elevates things very quickly.
It was at 10 o'clock at night.
It was 10 o'clock at night.
That's plenty of time to get your vibe on, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Oh, there was a vibe. For sure, yeah. There was a vibe happening. It's tough because large public events, when you're getting tens of thousands of people together, there comes a risk, a certain amount of risk. But I think that what has to happen, the question then becomes whether there's a safety plan, and they were expecting to be able to control this vibe, the energy of that moment. And it can quickly escalate, as we saw.
Well, 10 o'clock on a Saturday night is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If people have had a chance to imbibe in whatever mood-altering substances or drinking that they want, if they're old enough.
And when we were out there at the rodeo, I'm always impressed to see how many people just in general are working and volunteering at the rodeo, but then also coming to the rodeo. And we keep saying, we are the biggest rodeo in the world and we have this rodeo culture. Have we lost a little bit of the kind of wholesome actual
I always feel safe out there.
I do too.
I always have. I've been there 35 years. I've always felt safe.
I don't go to the night carnival event type thing.
Well, I've been out there covering it as a weatherman. Hey, it's a great night to be out here. But I've never been out there that late, and I've never been out except to go to a concert.
Yeah, and usually then I just go home.
Go to my car and go home. You're right. And well, look, they had meetings. They've stepped up their security.
Yes.
They're monitoring social media to see if there's anything that gives them a hint about something that might be going down. They are going to have more law enforcement. And other than that, what do you do? I mean, they have.
That's pretty much it. They have to be transparent on,
they have metal detectors as you go in.
Yeah, I always feel extremely safe at the rodeo. Again, I just have never been there that late at night. And it's unfortunate because I think that there are families that would freak me out if I was out there with my kids and all of a sudden that started happening and you're in the middle of it.
There are very few open spaces I want to be at 10 o'clock at night. And I'm not just saying that because I'm old. I just never have been that guy. I really haven't. Inside a club or having a martini somewhere is one thing. But I mean, even concerts kind of freak me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people and they're all, not everybody's sober, and they're all trying to get somewhere fast. They just crowd out of there.
I am going to sound like an old lady right now, but I feel like we just live in a different time, Frank, than in the 90s, or in the early 2000s. Now everything just feels a little bit more vulnerable.
Speaking of which, we started watching your obsession love story, the Carolyn Bessette JFK love story.
Yes.
And the New York Times had a fabulous article about that moment in history, in our time, in our life, when the cell phone, the World Trade Centers were still standing. You didn't have cell phones. You didn't have text. People chain smoked. It was kind of a grab a paper and keep
People
going.
went to the payphone to make a phone call.
It was a little slower. It probably didn't feel like it at the time.
Yeah.
But if people are thinking about that time of life and when it was a little different, it's kind of nice.
Been thinking, and right now the 90s is having a moment because of that, and because of the fashion, and because you're looking at it was very minimalistic, and it was kind of cool to be a little mysterious. It was kind of cool to be not in the middle in the mix. You still wanted to be in the middle of the mix, but there was an element of privacy that in many ways we don't have anymore.
It's when dressing down became dressing up.
Yeah.
It was different.
Yes, it
And
was.
so anyway, if you're thinking about that, we're really enjoying that. So
The
anyway,
love
my
story.
British computer guy back to the rodeo says, something tells me alcohol played a part in the incident, or something. I know a lot of kids are on gummies these days and they get a little relaxed. I mean, it was just, but it's late at night. Maybe you're just tired. You just don't want to put up with somebody else's crap.
Well, they get rowdy. I mean, it's the vibe. Like you said, there's lights, it's dark, kids are having fun. All of a sudden, there's a whole other world happening on teenagers, adults, phones. All of a sudden, people start texting and things can blow up very quickly.
So if you have any thoughts on that, give us a call, 713-440-8870. Interesting story, and I'm sure the rodeo has it all under control. I didn't want to leave us with that idea. So did you see the GOP working to blow up Talarico's viral 2021 declaration that, quote, God is non-binary?
Yes.
I'm not sure what that means either. But immediately after winning the primary, Republicans began plastering the quote and others from Talarico's archives across social media, casting the Democratic standard bearer as far left and wildly out of step with most sections as they possibly could. Eager to highlight his progressive views on topics ranging from race and gender to border security and Christianity, Republicans have seized on his footprint on the same online platforms. Talarico said in 2021 that, quote, radicalized white men are the greatest domestic terrorist threat in our country, quote, while discussing recent mass shootings. And I think what he was trying to say with God is non-binary is that God loves everyone, whether you're a man, a woman, a man becoming a woman becoming a man. Maybe you don't identify sexually at all. You're just sort of asexual and you're fluid. I think that's a lot of young people consider themselves fluid.
I'm not going to say whether the quote was right or wrong. What I do find very interesting is this tactic by the
grabbing this one thing.
Yes, campaigns now treat social media archives basically as opposition type research. And the question really becomes, are voters, does this sway voters, whether the old posts are going to define a candidate? And what I think that, the Republican Party is trying to do by doing this type of bringing this up is they're trying to frame Talarico in a way before Talarico can actually continue to frame himself. Because right now, his position is really, his message is speaking to a lot of people. My thought about the non-binary thing, I think what he's saying is God is above gender. God is not within his time. It's like saying, well, God doesn't follow time from 24 hours.
Right.
It is infinite. And so it's just really interesting if voters are going to judge him or judge candidates, what they were saying, on their record and why are they proposing this now?
Well, maybe God is non-binary,
Yeah.
I
don't
like
know.
to think God loves everybody, no matter what.
Absolutely. I think God loves everybody. But I also think that to me, whether God is non-binary, that's not necessarily the conversation. I think that that's what they want us to do because it's very easy to take a position on that and have issue than it is to say, why are you bringing up old post?
Yeah,
because
you can't find anything current?
Because you can't find anything current. I'm pretty sure if you looked up anybody who has any kind of social media record.
And a political career.
Anybody, you can find things that maybe I didn't really, didn't age well. That's not really what I should have been saying. Or in that time, it felt relevant. And today it doesn't. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I think his comeback will be pretty solid. In terms of what if he responds to this, which he may just be. I had a great agent for my television career, a woman named Carol Cooper with Beanstalk up in New York. And whenever anything happened with anybody, she said, just don't talk about it and it will go away. If you talk about it, it'll give it life. Just if there's anything ever said about you,
I could use that in many different forms.
It's been a mantra in my life.
That is great.
Yeah.
That is some great advice. The other day I was talking about a friend, with Dan, and we were talking, and he said, there's just some people you have to just learn how to ignore. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, well, maybe.
This will be answered. When we die, we'll go meet God. We'll find out what she looks like, right?
That's right. What she looks like. I'm looking forward to meeting her. Coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to talk about the shortage of affordable rental units right here in Houston. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Meet Dio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
A look at the challenges young women face. That's next time on Think.
Think tonight at 11 here on News 88.7. Support for Houston Public Media comes from UT Health Houston, Houston's health university, where education, research, and patient care come together to help advance health and improve lives in Houston and beyond. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
Support comes from the Imprint Cool Brain series, presenting Gordon Corman, author of more than 100 kids' books, with his new middle grade novel, Hyper Gifted, Sunday, March 29th, 3 p.m. at Meyerland Middle School. More at imprint.org.
Support comes from the Grand 1894 Opera House, presenting The Wizard of Oz on ice. Professional skaters perform the staged adaptation of the story featuring Dorothy, Toto, and the Yellow Brick Road. March 21st, thegrand.com.
Support comes from Belmont Village Senior Living, committed to enriching the lives of seniors through daily programs, custom care, and hospitality in assisted living and memory care. 2 Houston area locations. More at belmontvillage.com/Houston. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro Fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
And now back to Hello Houston. To get your comment in on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Celeste Diaz-Sherman and Frank Billingsley.
A new report from the National Low Income Housing Coalition finds the U.S. is short about $7.2 million rental homes that are affordable and available to people with extremely low incomes. Nationwide, there are only 35 affordable homes for every 100 households in that income group. And while Houston is often seen as a relatively affordable city, the report shows a very different picture for the lowest income residents, with the region facing one of the largest shortages of affordable housing in the country. To help us break down the national picture and what's happening right here in Texas, we're joined by Ben Martin, Deputy Director of Texas Housers. Ben, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hello, it's great to be here with you both.
Hey, Ben, let's just start with this. What do you consider extremely low income?
Yeah, so there is a technical definition of an extremely low income household, and that's a household that makes 30% or less of median family income. So if median family income in an area is around $80,000, say maybe $90,000, depending on where you are in Texas, 30% of that, these are households that are making below $50,000 a year as a total household, maybe significantly less than that. And there are quite a few households in the Houston area that unfortunately are making these extremely low incomes, which makes it very difficult for them to afford their housing.
So then, given that definition, your report says there are only 35 affordable homes for every 100 extremely low income renters. How did we let that gap get to that wide?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And unfortunately, housing is a very complicated topic where there's not one solution. What I will say is that anytime demand for housing outstrips the supply of housing, prices go up. But it's even more complicated than that. One of the real key takeaways from this report is that we're not going to be able to just simply build our way towards affordability. There are households in this lowest income bracket that are making low enough incomes that it's going to be very difficult for the housing market to produce housing to support them without additional support from governments, both locally, at the state level, and at the federal level.
Well, so you're talking subsidies, clearly. How do those stack up these days? Subsidies have been pretty good for low-income people, haven't they, when it comes to housing?
Oh, I wouldn't say that at all, actually.
No? Okay.
It's
Thanks for the correction.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. It's fairly consistent over time that federal subsidies for low-income households only cover about a quarter of the households that are income eligible for those subsidies. So we've never had enough money for over a generation to support the low-income households that market rate housing isn't supporting.
I know I worked with Channel 2 for a long time, and they have a good relationship with Habitat for Humanity. And what struck us all about that is that there were income limits, but the people that get those homes have to prove a certain eligibility in terms of making an income and contributing to the down payment and being able to afford the rent or the mortgage payment for those homes. Has there anything like that structure ever been put in place for any kind of housing that you have to show that you are looking for a job or have a job and have at least a certain income and that you're a good, viable renter?
Well, so the problem with housing is that unlike other things that are potentially subsidized, housing is a necessity. You really can't live without it. And if you put a lot of bells and whistles on access to housing, that doesn't mean that the people who don't meet that threshold for whatever reason don't still need housing. So there's this question of, do we want people who are getting government subsidies to work while they're getting those subsidies? Sure, there's really good arguments to support that. But that person who can't meet that work requirement, it doesn't mean that they don't need housing. And if they don't have access to housing that they can afford, in many cases, those households unfortunately fall into homelessness, and it becomes a vicious cycle that then becomes the whole community's problem again. Currently, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, is actually proposing work requirement rules. And it's a bit of a misconception that there are just, a majority of households accessing federal subsidies that aren't working. In fact, the majority of able-bodied, non-senior, non-child residents in public housing are working quite a lot, at least 40 hours a week, and still struggling to afford housing because the market just simply isn't matching housing that's affordable at the income levels that they're making.
And that's exactly what I was going to ask you, Ben. So where does the issue essentially fall? Is it a housing construction problem? Are we looking at a wage problem? Or is this simply a policy failure at the highest levels all the way down to our local level?
Yeah, this is sort of an all of the above problem. When there's a few different ways to look at housing affordability, one of those ways is to just look at the cost of housing. So you'll hear a lot of conversations around housing where it's an attempt to stabilize housing costs and to stop housing costs from just skyrocketing, from increasing, right? That makes a lot of sense. But as you are hinting at, housing affordability is really a ratio or a relationship between housing costs on the one hand, you want to keep those down, and incomes, you want to keep those up enough to afford the housing costs. So even if you're able to stabilize housing costs, which Houston has actually done a pretty good job at overall, if incomes aren't matching housing costs, housing is still going to be unaffordable for those very low income, extremely low income households. So do we need to build more housing to bring down market rate housing costs? Absolutely. Would it help if folks' wages and salaries were higher? Absolutely, that would help. And do we need public policy tools to help address this for the households that are falling through the cracks? Also, yes.
And I want to zero in a little bit about, wages, and when we're looking at that. Are we seeing more working people falling into the extremely low income category?
Well, so what you see in Houston is a really interesting dynamic where Texas has this reputation in housing policy discussions, especially compared to states on either coast of the country, as being a fairly lax regulatory state, right? Like you can build faster, more efficiently, more effectively in the state of Texas. And then Houston has this reputation as the no zoning city, right? It's like the relaxed regulatory city in the relaxed regulatory state. And so if you look at middle income housing costs, they have gone up. There are demand spikes. Like, for example, I'm sure many of your listeners remember coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic when housing costs were skyrocketing for everyone, renter, owner, no matter your income, housing costs were going up. Those have actually stabilized because there's been generally a lot of construction to meet it. But you still have these households, and there are many households in the Houston area where their income just isn't matching housing costs. And even if you stabilize those middle income housing costs, low income renter households are still going to be really struggling. That's kind of the main point of this report when you look at it, is that Houston has this reputation nationally for being relatively affordable. Now, I know, like, to your listeners that are struggling, that may sound comical, but compared to some places on the coast, buying a home in Houston is more affordable than other places in the country. But if you look at renters, and if you look at low income renters, you see a concentration of housing cost burden, meaning people paying more than 30% of their income towards rent, and even people paying more than half of their income towards rent. And even stabilizing housing costs is not meeting the housing needs of these households. If their incomes went up, maybe, but given that there is a large share of households in the Houston area that have incomes that are not matching housing costs, this is going to be a persistent problem.
Hey, Ben, we've talked about this this situation on this program before, whereby landlords are given tax breaks to have a certain percentage of their units affordable for low income. And maybe some of those landlords weren't really playing by the rules. Where does that stand? Do you know?
Yeah, so yes, I do. There has been legislation on some of these tools, and we don't have to get super in the weeds with the policy detail, but it's kind of a whack-a-mole where the legislature addresses one tool, one session, and then there's another section of state statute that needs to be addressed the next session. Overall, these programs are facing more regulation than they used to. But what you're talking about is basically this idea that a multifamily rental property, an apartment building, will get a 100% property tax exemption. They don't have to pay their property taxes. And in exchange, they make a certain portion of the units at that property affordable at various income levels. And the long and short of it is that at too many of these properties, both locally in the Houston-Harris County area, but really we see this across the state, at too many of these properties, the income restricted levels are what some renters, I've heard them call fake affordable housing. It is income restricted, but it's basically like middle income housing. And if you look at the GAP report that the National Low Income Housing Coalition just released, the concentration of people who truly can't afford their housing is among those with the lowest incomes. So the affordable housing that's being provided by these tax exemptions is not meeting the needs of actual cost burden households. Right. And in some cases, it's even worse, where the housing isn't actually more affordable than comparable market rate housing in the same neighborhoods. So that's why there's been this reform process of these tax exemptions. They're really important, but they need to produce housing that actually helps address cost burden.
We are speaking with Ben Martin about the shortage of affordable rental units for low-income earners. If you would like to join the conversation, you can call or text 713-440-8870. We do have a call from Lisa from Clear Lake. Lisa, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment or question for Ben?
Hi, thank you. Thanks for taking my call. One thing that, as a realtor, that I noticed, and Mr. Martin had mentioned the very visible impact on pricing during COVID. As a realtor, I handle a lot of leases as well. And before COVID and before the really high demand for properties here in the Houston area, the typical rental home would have a deposit requirement, a gross income for the household of at least twice the monthly rent. Now that went up to 3 times the monthly rent, which if you're looking at a house that is, $1,500 a month, for example, that's a huge amount of money that you're expected to cough up to show that, I make this much more. The deposits on the homes went up. The pet deposits went up. And we're talking really high. But the thing is, the property owners insure their properties, and those, home insurance prices also have skyrocketed, especially in the Houston area. So all of, that devil is in the details, that little cliche is so true. And so it's not just that there's not enough housing in a certain price bracket, the requirements for people to even get their foot in the door. And I mean, if you've got a roommate and, you're looking at a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, that's going to be easier to pull off if you both have jobs. But if you're a single parent or it's just yourself, that an extra month's worth of rent just for a deposit, that's a lot to ask.
You almost got to make $60,000 a year just to get into something like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Is Lisa still on the line?
People aren't going to buy. Well, people aren't going to rent if they, if they're going to have to spend just as much as they would buying a house. They're not going to rent. So it puts them in a lurch.
Right. Ben?
Yeah. Ben, what's your response to Lisa?
Yeah, Lisa is absolutely right. And it's really important that she brings up this question of property insurance in a place like Houston, which is, prone to flooding and hurricanes and natural disasters. This is a big crisis, both for single family owners right now and also for multifamily rental housing owners. The cost of increasing insurance is being passed along to renters. And there's not really a clear policy solution for this right now. Insurance companies are asking for more to insure these properties, which means that it's going to be passed down to the renters that are facing this struggle of how to afford that housing. Lisa also touched on something really important around increasing fees, both upfront fees when you are, or regulations when you're trying to find a rental home, and then hidden fines and fees when you're actually living there. Sometimes these are referred to as junk fees. And if you own your home now and you were a renter many years ago, you may be less familiar with this, but current renters will be very familiar with the idea that you're paying this much money for rent, maybe $1,500 a month for rent. And then once you sign the lease, you discover that there are $500 additional dollars of mandatory monthly fees tacked onto your bill. Your effective rent is $2,000, but you didn't know that when you signed the lease. So this is a really ripe opportunity for regulation to make sure that when people are renting their housing, they are aware of these fines and fees that are effectively a part of their rent.
So at the end of the day, Ben, how do we compare with other places like Florida, Alabama, Georgia that have similar issues? Have they found any solutions that we should be tapping into?
Well, if you look just purely at the results, Houston is doing a poor job at addressing lowest income rental housing needs. You would think that a relatively affordable city like Houston would be doing better than some of the big expensive coastal cities that you're familiar with, like Boston or New York or Washington, D.C. It turns out that among the metropolitan areas that are studied in this report, Houston is the third worst when it comes to providing units that are affordable and available to the lowest income households. And that really is because this is about that ratio between your income and how much rent costs. If rent is relatively lower in Houston than it is in some of those coastal cities, incomes are also much lower, which means that housing is still out of reach. And an interesting wrinkle on that, as you mentioned, Florida, Orlando is another city that's not doing particularly well, which I think you can attribute to a similar dynamic of maybe relatively lower housing costs, but also relatively lower incomes.
And based on your research and looking at the information that you have, if there could be one action taken that you think could streamline and make a difference, what would it be?
I can't give you one action. I think there are many actions that need to be taken at the local, state, and federal level to concentrate on who can't afford their housing, who is cost burdened, and tailor a variety, a full toolkit of policy responses to those lowest income households. So rather than a specific policy, I would say a mindset of always saying who in our city can't afford housing and how are we helping those households afford their housing. And what you will find if you follow the data is that it's the lowest income renter households. That's where the housing crisis is.
It's really interesting. Thanks for the education, Ben.
Yeah, thanks. Ben Martin is the deputy director at Texas Housers. Ben, again, thanks for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you for having me.
And coming up, the Houston art scene is expanding. We're going to be speaking with the Opera House Gallery. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Houston Matters.
Meet Damola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Damola to learn more about his ride.
Stream online at your leisure at houstonpublicmedia.org. And reach out with questions or comments anytime. Email us at talk@houstonmatters.org.
The U.S. has long tried to combat gender-based violence worldwide, but much of that came to an end with the Trump administration's slashing of foreign aid last year.
They never said violence against women was okay. It was just getting rid of anything that made a reference to gender.
I'm Elsa Chang, the ripple effects of aid cuts on All Things Considered from NPR News.
All Things Considered this afternoon starting at 3 o'clock here on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to handling claims to help injured workers get back to work. More at texasmutual.com/mutual care.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Bayou City Art Festival, March 28th and 29th in downtown. An outdoor gallery with over 200 artists, entertainment, and food. Tickets at BayouCityArtFestival.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from attorney mediator Ron Bankston, providing in-person, video conference, and hybrid mediation and arbitration services. More information is available at ronbankston.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Grand 1894 Opera House, presenting the Duke Ellington Orchestra in concert, March 28th at 8 p.m., featuring music from the orchestra's jazz repertoire. Tickets at thegrand.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celestia Sherman and Frank Billingsley.
Houston's art scene is getting a new addition this week with the opening of the Opera Gallery Houston, part of the international network of galleries known for showcasing modern and contemporary works by some of the world's most recognizable artists. The gallery's arrival adds another layer to the city's already thriving cultural landscape, anchored by institutions like the Museum of Fine Arts Houston and the Contemporary Arts Museum Houston. But beyond the opening night buzz, it raises bigger questions about how Houston's place is in the global art market and about how art galleries shape the way we experience and value art. Joining us now to talk about the launch and the broader role of art in cities like Houston is Gregory Lahmi, director of Opera Gallery Houston, and Gilles Dyan, founder and chairman of the Opera Gallery Group. Gregory, Gilles, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you.
So the Opera Gallery has locations in cities like Paris, London, New York. Why was Houston the right place for this next chapter?
So we opened Opera Gallery. The first one was in Singapore 31 years ago. So we have right now, with the Houston Gallery, 17 locations. We are in major cities, as you said. We are in Paris, in London, in Hong Kong, in New York, Singapore. And Houston for us was a normal destination because we had the gallery in Aspen for around 10 years. And most of the collectors, the big collectors that were buying painting from us in Aspen, but also we have a lot of important Houston collectors or Texas collectors, who are buying from us in New York, in Paris, and in other cities. So many of them ask us why you don't open a gallery in Houston, and we are here. So
it was time, Gilles. It was time.
It was the time. Exactly, it was the time.
Yeah, and talk to us a little bit about when people walk through the doors for the first time. What kind of artistic experience are you hoping that they will have that's going to be unique to Houston?
I don't know if it's unique to Houston. I think the most important thing I want people to have when they come in the gallery is to enjoy. It's just to appreciate what they see and to make an experience, not like a museum and not like others' gallery. It's just we're trying to be as much open as we can for a wide people, for a wide audition.
Mm-hmm.
And we are willing to speak to everyone and to show the best quality of art possible. So you're right by saying that the work that we show are museum quality, but it's not enough. You need also to be friendly, to be welcoming, and people need to feel very à l'aise, as we say in French, so easy, ease, in a very good atmosphere.
So when we walk in, is there a particular genre we're going to see at the Opera Gallery? Is it more large scale, medium scale, sculptures?
It's both. It's sculptures and painting, large scale and medium scale. Now, in the gallery, it would be more medium scale because of the size of the gallery itself. Mm-hmm. But outside of the mall, in the River Oak district, we're also installing very big sculptures outside for the public in general. So those sculpture would be placed outside and they are monumentals.
But we have also monumental works in the gallery. We have, for example, an iconic historical painting by Gilles, and the size is 2.50 m by 5 meters. And it is a painting that never been shown, It's a fantastic piece that we bought recently. And this one is the biggest artwork that we have in the gallery, but when people will come, as Gregory said to you, we are very welcoming, all the public, even if it is young people, students, anyone. But you could have a look for Picasso paintings, Chagall painting, Paul Delvaux painting, Gilles, Basquiat, all the big names, of the 20th century. Mostly post-war, but also we are focused on modern art. We have a very large collection of Picasso, Chagall, Miro, all these iconic, magical names. And we are very, very happy, to be there and to present this type of works to the Houston public.
So in addition to the mainstays, and it says like the masters will be there, will you have a section sort of that rotates and brings in new artists and maybe some fabulous artists we haven't seen before?
Sure, we have. So what we are dealing, in Opera Gallery Group. So we have we have a lot of inventory that we are owning or controlling of masterpieces, starting at the Impressionist, modern art, post-war, also to the American pop art. But we have also a selection of young, upcoming, contemporary artists that we love and we like to support and to defend, all over the world. And we have a very large network of gallery, we can give them a very wide also exposure.
Yeah, Gilles, it's interesting, right? Because you founded the International Gallery Network more than 30 years. You've been in this world for a very long time. When you look at art and the art world today, What has changed most in the way art is bought, sold, and also just in general experienced?
Since 30 years, many change, because there is now a lot of transparency, on the works, because everything can be seen, on internet. So us, we are working, we are very, very open, with all the clients we have, and we could develop our group because we have a trust, from our client, and we give them the good advice, and people are buying back, from us. But it changed a lot, let's say 30 years ago, many dealers and I knew and I know now, they were buying painting in auction in New York, for one price, and they were selling it maybe 2 weeks after in Europe for much more expensive. So now it is not the case, it is different. The collectors are much more sophisticated, and they know they know exactly what to buy at what price. So we try to give them the better advice as we can.
Yeah, I was going to ask about developing young people into art collectors. When I was a young person, I have a friend whose philosophy was only buy the original. Now, don't buy copies, buy the original, find an artist you like, and an artist you can afford, and build to where you want to go. Because not everybody can walk into a gallery and drop a ton of money for a masterpiece. So but we've got to get young people on the track of collecting. How do we do that?
I think it's by interest, mainly. I think it's by doing exhibition. It's by doing shows, events, by show them for free, because the entrance is free in a gallery, and it's probably less intimidating than any other places. So by learning, by creating the interest, I think this is the first step for any young people to get in the art. After that, it's your own test. Of course, if you know an advisor or an art dealer or an art critic that can lead you in your choice, this is even better. But your own interest, your own taste will lead you to what you will collect ultimately. Obviously, as you say, some pieces of art are very expensive, and so it depends what you collect, because art can be not only very expensive. There is pieces that start at low prices, and it's art. So collecting comes from your own desire, your own interest, and the people you interact with as well. After that, when you evaluate in life, your collection also could evaluate with you.
Yeah.
This is what we observe.
Yeah, and Gregory, how important do you think it is that cities outside of the traditional art capitals, like we've been talking about London and New York, that they're shaping the global art market, like right here in Houston? How important is that?
Houston, it's, to me, as far as I could have observed from Colorado and from everybody other place I met my Texan collector, it's one of the major cities of global art interest. Not only painting, not only sculptures, but art in wide. Means a theater, movie, show, cultural event like the Rodeo, for instance. So not only it's a big town, but also it's an attractive town in terms of events, and this is really important. So for us, we like to touch our direct collectors, but we also like to partner and to develop at the cultural level what the city can offer. So Houston, I think, and I'm pretty sure of what I'm saying, it's the leading town, not only in Texas, but probably one of the 3 main towns in the U.S. in terms of artistic.
You going to take any consignments? A lot of people have some pieces they'd like to probably, get on your wall.
Most of the works we have, we own it. Most of the works we have, we own it. But sometimes we take works in consignment. It could arrive, And we are buying back a lot the paintings that we sold to our collectors. Long time ago. This is mostly for the masterpieces. But as Gregory said to you, so we have a wide range of masterpieces, but we have also a range, of contemporary artists, and the starting point price is very low, because we have some very young upcoming artists. We believe that they can do a great career, and we take care of them, and we take really good care of them. It means we are buying the works, we are making catalogs, we are making books for them. We have 2 people in our organization who is trying to sell works to museum, to organize, museum shows. This is very nice.
I look forward to checking it out.
Yes.
Thanks for telling us about it. I love the name, Opera Gallery.
Gilles Dyan is the founder and chairman of the Opera Gallery Group, and Gregory Lahmi is the director of Opera Gallery Houston. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
a
you.
lot.
And coming up, we're going to continue discussing today's top headlines. Just ahead, we're going to check in with energy expert Ed Hurst for a look at the latest shifts in the energy markets. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Join us for Hello Houston, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., taking a deep dive into the stories that matter to Houstonians, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained, with the generous support from our founding sponsor, Kathy Sanders.
Cold and windy today here in the Houston area. It's going to be that way for the rest of the afternoon, the high of around 55 today. Tonight, decreasing clouds, the low around 40. On Tuesday, you can expect highs of around 61 with sunny skies. 49 degrees here at the University of Houston. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston, News 88.7. It's a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
More Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter.
Just ahead on this hour, Hello Houston,
HoustonPublicMedia.org.
University of Houston Energy fellow Ed Hurst will join us to talk about President Trump's urging NATO, China, and other nations to help the U.S. secure the vital Strait of Hormuz. We'll discuss this and more of the top headlines of the day. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with Deputy Director of Policy at the Bail Project, Nicole Zayas Manzano, about new data out of Harris County suggesting recent changes to the local bail system may be working.
Plus, we'll celebrate the 100th anniversary of one of Houston's most unique and iconic cultural landmarks, the Julia Ideson Library, with Executive Director of the Houston Public Library Foundation, Nicholas Sawicki.
Also, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Strait of Hormuz, where the Iran war's blockade on oil shipments is resulting in soaring gas prices in the U.S.
We strongly encourage other nations whose economies depend on the Strait far more than ours. We get less than 1% of our oil from the Strait, and some countries get much more. Japan gets 95%. China gets 90%. Many of the Europeans get quite a bit. South Korea gets 35%. So we want them to come and help us with the Strait.
President Trump's convening the Kennedy Center's Board of Trustees this afternoon. According to reports, this meeting involves a vote on plans to close the Performing Arts Center for 2 years of renovations. Over the weekend, a federal judge ruled that Democratic Congresswoman Joyce Beatty of Ohio had to be given access to details of today's meeting and allowed to participate and register her opposition. President Trump will sign an executive order this afternoon launching a whole-of-government approach to tackling fraud. The president announced the effort in his State of the Union address last month. NPR's Deepa Shivaram reports.
Trump tasked Vice President J.D. Vance with overseeing the task force that will look into fraud on the federal and state level. In an interview with Fox News, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt specifically mentioned tackling fraud in states like New York and California, both led by Democrats.
We're going to turn every page to find and identify this fraud, to prosecute the individuals who are engaged in it. This will be, again, a whole-of-government effort.
Vance has also been tasked with looking into fraud in Minnesota, another Democrat-led state. Last month, the administration suspended Medicaid payments to the state until they came up with a plan to tamp down on fraud. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News, the White House.
An Afghan man who served alongside U.S. forces has died in ICE custody. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports he was in the U.S. legally with a pending asylum claim.
Mohammed Nazir Pakhtiwal served alongside American special forces in Afghanistan, according to documents seen by NPR. He helped U.S. troops for over a decade. In 2021, Pakhtiwal fled Afghanistan with his family because the Taliban were threatening to kill Afghans who had collaborated with the U.S. Since then, Pakhtiwal had been living in Texas with his wife and 6 children. A family statement says last Friday he was taking his kids to school when federal agents in unmarked cars surrounded Pakhtiwal and drove him away. He complained of breathing problems and was given medical attention, according to a statement from ICE, but the next morning he was pronounced dead in a Dallas hospital. ICE says the cause of death is under investigation. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up more than 400 points. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. We're seeing unseasonably cool temperatures and windy conditions today after a cold front arrived last night. Cameron Self, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, says windy weather will continue throughout the day.
We've seen gusts over 50 miles per hour near the coast, though in the Houston metro area, it's generally been about 35 to 45 miles per hour. Temperatures are going to remain colder than normal over the next couple of days. Well north of Houston could even have a light freeze.
A red flag warning is in effect for most of the greater Houston area through 7 o'clock tonight. 9 historic documents from the early days of the United States are coming to Houston's Museum of Natural Science. The National Archives is bringing the documents to 8 cities across the country, including Houston. Those documents include a rare copy of the Declaration of Independence and the Treaty of Paris, which ended the American Revolution. Here's the Houston Museum of Natural Science's Dirk van Turenhout.
It's a tremendous opportunity. It's a great honor to be able to share these documents, given the history. And, of course, the fact that they go back to the very beginning of the history of the United States.
The documents will be on display at the museum from May 8th through the 25th. The Trump administration has collected over $125 billion in tariffs over the past year, including more than $11 billion from Texas. The U.S. Supreme Court said the process was illegal, and the U.S. Court of International Trade said the administration must repay what it's collected, but it's not clear when or whether that will happen. If you're a small business owner who has been affected by the tariffs, Houston Public Media wants to hear from you. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org/news tips. You can leave us a comment or upload a voice memo. We may reach out to you for an upcoming story. And in sports, the University of Houston men's basketball team will be a number 2 seed during the NCAA tournament this year. The Cougars will take on 15th seeded Ohio, who won the automatic qualifier from the Big Sky Conference. That game will be played in Oklahoma City. 49 degrees and mostly cloudy right now on the University of Houston campus. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include United States Postal Service, dedicated to putting reliability at the core of USPS Ground Advantage to help businesses operate smoothly. More at USPS.com/Ground Advantage.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Houston.
Hello, Frank.
Hello, Celeste. Hello, touch of winter. It's cold outside.
It's chilly.
I know, but it's kind of fun to wear a last gasp of sweater.
Yes, and I said it. We've chatted about this for a while now, and I've said it before. I feel summer is just lurking, so I am totally fine with this little cold snap that we're having.
And it won't last long. Although tonight, I mean, it's chilly out there. It's going to be a high of 55 today, overnight down to 38, 40, and then tomorrow 60s. But you know what?
Pretty.
We might hit 90 by the weekend.
Yikes.
90 degrees in March.
Ugh.
I know.
That's going to be tough.
That kind of spoiled it for you, didn't it?
But Easter's right around the corner. What can we expect? Is this going to be like now we're just getting into summer and that's it? Pretty much.
No. It might be very pleasant. April could be nice for us. I hope so too, because May is going to come quickly. Yeah. And May's still a pretty good month. The humidity along with the heat really kick in June.
Yeah.
That's when all the rich people go summer in Maine.
That's right. That's right.
We got a few comments on our segment from segment A.
Yep.
The very first one about Talarico, that the Republicans have taken this meme of him from when he said God is non-binary. Mm-hmm. Steve from Midtown says, I think that what Talarico is trying to say is that God is not a man or a woman. God is all. Personally, I don't believe that because I don't believe in God, but I used to be a pastor, and I always thought God was not necessarily a he or a she. And please forgive any spelling errors because I'm used to talk text.
Yes.
Well, that's honest enough.
Yeah. And, when we also received a YouTube comment when Talarico says God is non-binary, he clearly means God is neither male nor female, that it has no sex gender because it are not human.
Yeah, and then someone, Braden Arnold says one of the worst parts of this was the AI-generated video that was posted of, quote, James Talarico, at least somebody that looked like him, reading these old tweets.
Oh, that's terrible.
That's low.
That is terrible.
We probably haven't seen the lowest of the low in politics so far, but I tell you, you really have to know what you're getting into when you throw your hat in those rings, because it is a contact sport.
Throwing your hat into those rings.
Yes.
Trump really threw his hat into one big ring, but we're going to chat about that in a little bit. But
no, I love it. We're also going to talk about Deputy Director of Policy at the Bail Project, Nicole Zayas Manzano, about new data out of Harris County. We've talked about this before, about the changes to the local bail system, going like no cash. And it looks like the data is showing that it's kind of working.
Yeah, we had them on and we talked about it was kind of when this policy was moving forward. We weren't sure what it was going to look like. Now it's been.
Is it discriminatory?
Yes.
Is it not discriminatory?
Lots
of
questions
Is
around
it not smart? We'll talk about that, and we're going to talk about the Ideson Library, the library
very much
downtown.
Looking forward to that. 100 years old.
It's beautiful.
It's
a beautiful spot, but. Like you said, let's just go bomb people and see what happens.
With the war with Iran entering its third week and oil prices climbing to nearly $100 a barrel, Monday, President Trump is again calling on allies to help secure the vital Strait of Hormuz. In an interview with the Financial Times, the president urged countries including China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom to send warships to protect the narrow shipping route, where roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply typically passes. Iran has been blocking the strait since the conflict began. So far, none of the nations Trump named have publicly committed to sending ships, and some have rejected the request outright. The president has warned their refusal could be, quote, very bad for the future of NATO. And joining us now to make sense of it all is University of Houston Energy Fellow and a friend of the show, Ed Hurst. If you have any questions or comments, you can call 713-440-8870.
And let's get just some facts down here first. The Strait of Hormuz, how many boats normally go through there?
Well, enough to carry about 20 million barrels a day of crude oil and refined products.
A day?
A day.
So we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of boats.
If the very large carriers can carry 2 million barrels.
Okay.
So a minimum of 20.
Okay.
And then, of course, you've got at least 20 coming back the other way empty.
So the straits are about 20, 25 miles wide, this area that they get through. And I guess they go through the middle of it. Are there channels?
The channel is not more than a mile wide.
So they have to go down this 1 mile highway, basically, in the Strait of Hormuz. So,
like the Houston Ship Channel.
Yeah, sure. So when they say it's closed, they don't mean it's closed like we put up orange cones. So what they mean is you go there, we're going to bomb you. We're going to shoot at you.
Yes, that's it.
And they have.
And they have. 14, 15 ships have been attacked.
So nobody wants to go, at least if now that they're escorted by other bigger ships.
Yeah, but still, the escorts can't handle the little tiny drones that go in. Go to Radio Shack, get a couple of pounds of C4 and fly it into one of the manifolds on a tanker. It's really difficult to stop that.
It's almost kamikaze, isn't it? These drones have no human person.
That's it. It's a bomb.
Yeah.
It's a bomb. It's a flying bomb. It's a steerable bomb. And it's difficult to defend against that.
And so is this just direct? This is the reason oil prices are nearly $100 a barrel.
Yes. So, with the 20 million barrels a day off the market, it's had a big impact, but not as big as it could be. Our analysis points to removing, say, 10% from the global market would lead to a 250% price increase. So we're well under the $200 a barrel that Iran has threatened us with. Mm-hmm. Now, keep in mind, Iran is still shipping oil through the Strait. So the Strait is blocked, if you will, but not to Iran, which is shipping to China, which is shipping to its customers.
Well, and so what do you think about Trump asking China and NATO allies to send some boats over to help protect these other oil
this is Navy.
tankers?
This is war.
Yeah.
This is
not
real,
Germany's, is it?
This is
Germany
real
said
out
this.
of pocket.
Yeah.
Real and this is Trump's war.
Yeah.
They talk about how they've gone to war in a way that George W. Bush didn't. Even though the Bush administration went to war on the basis of very, very flawed intelligence, at least he built a coalition before he went in. Trump went in without any support from anyone else. And quite honestly, buying cheap oil with the military is wrong. Bush went in the face of an analysis that said, well, if you go into Iraq, it's going to cost us $1.2 trillion. In 2014 here in Houston at the Energy Symposium, I pointed out that the cost of the conflict that W had put us on was more than $4 trillion. Brown University tracked that. If we had put that onto a gallon of gasoline over that period of time, across all of the gasoline the U.S. had consumed, it would have been $1.19 a gallon. Instead, it went on the nation's MasterCard. And so, the cost was there. This was in the context of the Keystone XL pipeline. And that's not including the cost of the thousands who were killed and the tens of thousands who were wounded. It's a lot less expensive to put a pipeline through Nebraska than it is to mount a war effort. And most of our allies understand that. They would rather go ahead and pay a higher price for the crude oil. And actually, that would benefit Texas producers dramatically rather than commit their military forces.
Now, Ed, okay, so if we're looking at this just basic from market impact, besides the actual tactile situation of war that you mentioned, are we seeing any type of panic or unusual behavior in oil futures as a result of these events?
Well, the futures market has been very volatile. There are rumors that there's a huge short seller who's been working to push the price down over the last couple of weeks. Various traders think it might be the U.S. Treasury itself. If that's the case, then the Treasury is going to wind up having to deliver an awful lot of oil at Cushing or buy these futures back. Again, the nothing's more scurrilous than rumors of somebody about to get squeezed. We all remember the movie Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy.
So we do. So you mentioned, I think you mentioned last time you were here, Karg Island?
Yes.
Kharg. Mm-hmm. Tell our audience why Karg Island is important and what's happening with it now.
So the island is the export port for about 1.2 to 1.5 million barrels a day from Iran's oil fields. Iraq took it over during the war with Iran more than a decade ago. But it's Iran's. It's not the exclusive way that Iran can export. They can divert those exports to other outlets. They can export across land and pipelines. What's really kind of interesting, they attacked Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan has been a trading partner with Iran for getting that sanctioned oil out for many years. But there are other ways that Iran can take this oil to market without that island.
So are we? Trump seemed to indicate that he was going to attack that island.
He did,
and he did.
And his post on Truth Social said that he had taken out the military installations on the island, and the videos we were shown, showed the airstrip being bombed, but not the oil. He said he was doing that out of a sense of decency.
So, Ed, obviously I don't want to divert us, but I'm curious. Houston is widely considered the energy capital of the world. What type of conversations are happening right now at the major companies, from the big ones, the middle ones, the small ones, right here in our own city, that we are? Talk to us about those conversations.
The conversations are not any different than they were, several weeks ago, except now they're getting a little better price on the oil. And all through 2025, because of Trump asking MBS and Saudi Arabia to increase production, we got hammered. The price of oil was about $80 a barrel before Trump took office, and it's been down. January it hit $56 a barrel after we got out of Venezuela. That's very difficult for the U.S. oil patch. The Dallas Federal Reserve Bank Energy Survey from December of 24 pointed out that the break-even for drilling new wells was about $70 a barrel. Well, since then, the Trump administration has increased the cost of drilling. Number one, by having an impact on the workforce with the ICE activities, and then the increased cost of steel. The 50% increase in the tariff has increased the cost of steel all across the board for anyone in the oil patch. And without steel, you can't lay pipe, you can't run big laterals, and so the cost of a well is up 5% to 12% over the prior year. So the producers have been hit hard. Sure, the price of the stocks for the oil and gas producers is up, but that doesn't mean they can go out and get money and go drill new wells. It would be non-economic, and the White House is about to release a report today that says the goal is to have a price of oil less than $60 a barrel. So if I'm a U.S. oil producer, this is spring break, I'm going to go to the beach for a while.
Well, and we talk about how much it all costs per barrel, but we did get from Midtown Bazaar. We're in the twilight zone. Somebody wake me up. To fill my tank 3 weeks ago was $25. Yesterday it was $38. So I mean, the reality of that is that
it'll be $45 next week. Relax,
it'll all come back down. So we've had higher. Certainly in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine and the Biden administration released oil from the SPR. Of course, Trump at the time decried that. He said, you're just buying votes for the midterm. Well, now we're going to see a release of 172 million barrels from the SPR. Certainly there's going to be a redistribution effect.
And I would say, as a consumer, we're here in Texas. I've seen in California prices $7 per gallon at the pump.
Yeah, I've seen $8 a gallon at the pump in California. But California doesn't have enough of its own production anymore. It doesn't have enough of its own refining capacity. So the motorist in L.A. bids for gasoline against the motorists in Tokyo.
Yeah, they don't want any of those refineries on their precious coast.
That's why they're moving to Texas.
That's why they're here. But
yes.
Guess what? That means cheaper prices for us. So what's your prediction at the end of the day on this? Is it just a matter of if and when this war stops and the strait reopens?
It all relates to that. Nothing else changes.
Not the reserves, because I know that we talked about that.
And there's not an alternative route.
Well, we can move some of it partially out. And the fact is, Iran is actually helping the situation to keep the price down by continuing its exports to China. They're just stopping the flows from, certainly Kuwait and the Emirates have stopped their production now because they don't see a good way out. Qatar's LNG exports have ground to a halt. That's led to a big jump in diesel prices simply because those economies that can switch from natural gas to liquid petroleum have done so, and they switched to diesel. So, the farmer in Iowa is facing a huge bill for his diesel today. That was actually on one of the NPR stories last week. What are they going to do?
Your opinion on this NATO pushback that says, hey, it's your war?
That certainly looks the way it's going to be. Ordinarily, in prior administrations, there would have been a concerted effort, and all of this done through diplomatic channels. There would have been a united press release, one way, shape, form, or the other. But this appears to be kind of a public bullying.
But Ed, could this conflict trigger long-term changes in the global energy market?
If it continues, it will. Certainly a higher price of oil would induce capital providers here in the U.S. to expand domestic production activities. We could do that. We could scale up. It would certainly help the Venezuelan economy get back to producing oil. We know that the break-even price of oil for Venezuela is somewhere in the $70 to $80 a barrel range. And we're not going to see a huge amount of new production out of there unless it becomes economic to do it.
Well, nothing in that industry ever stays the same for very long, it doesn't seem like.
Well, it's very volatile, and that's why the major oil companies take a long view. They won't do anything unless their break-even price hurdles, which are significantly lower than $70 a barrel, are met. You take the long view, go out and drill for $35 oil. If it comes in, that's a great win.
Okay, what should listeners watch out for in the coming days to really understand how this conflict might affect oil prices and kind of just the broader economy as we wrap?
So I think consumers are going to be shifting their discretionary expenditures. Gasoline and diesel are not discretionary. We need this to get to work. We need this to do work. So we'll see less expenditures at restaurants. We'll see less expenditures at consumer goods and retail as we adjust over time. The automakers are going to be doing some deep discounts on the big SUVs and the big trucks. Good time to be in the EV business. But we are going to see the impact across the economy. New England is going to be hit with higher natural gas prices and higher electricity prices because they rely on LNG imports to keep their economy running.
At least we're getting out of winter. That'll help.
We're getting out of winter. That's good. But again, that really hits the ag workers and agricultural concerns all across the Northern Hemisphere. The expensive cost of diesel, especially in the U.S., where they've been hit by the trade war. The $12 billion bailout from Congress has not been distributed. The Trump administration has withheld that money for some reason. Our farmers are not in a good situation right now.
University of Houston Energy Fellow Ed Hurst, it's always great to have you. Thank you, Ed, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to talk about bail reform. This is News 88.7.
On Fresh Air, it's people who really make you think, like astrophysicist Brian Greene explaining the scientific theory that our universe is just one of many.
And the image that I like to have in mind is, imagine that our universe is like one slice of bread in a much grander cosmic loaf, with the other slices of bread being other universes.
No subject is too big for Fresh Air. Join us.
Fresh Air, weekdays at 8 p.m. on News 88.7.
Did you know your gift to Houston Public Media could go twice or even 3 times as far through your employer's matching gift program? Many companies will match the charitable donations of their employees, and some even match gifts from retirees. That means your support for trusted news and programs could have double the impact for our community. Find out if your company participates at houstonpublicmedia.org/match.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from DeCamera, presenting the Parker String Quartet with cellist Raman Ramakrishnan. Music by Beethoven, Philip Glass, and Schubert, March 28th at the Hobby Center. Tickets at decamera.com.
Support comes from Doran Mayhew, a CPA and advisory firm with tax, accounting, audit, payroll, consulting, and more, serving all sectors, including construction, manufacturing, wholesale and distribution, and international. More at doeren.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celestia Sherman and Frank Billingsley.
Bail reform has been under a microscope here in Texas after this year's legislative session, but new data out of Harris County suggests recent changes to the local bail system may be working. A new report from the court-appointed monitor overseeing reforms tied to the O'Donnell v. Harris County case finds that moving away from cash bail for low-level offenses has saved millions of dollars, reduced rearrests, and hasn't led to an increase in new crimes. To talk about what the data show, we're joined by Nicole Zayas Manzano, Deputy Director of Policy at the Bail Project. Nicole, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're delighted you're here, and I want to explore all three of these. So let's start with moving away from cash bail for low-level offenses has saved millions of dollars. How did that happen? Explain that to me.
So ultimately, what we know about cash bail is that it's costly not just for the defendant, who would have to find a way to actually gather that money up and be able to buy their freedom while pending trial. It's also costly for the county itself and for taxpayers, because while they're trying to get that money together, or if they don't have access to it, they're jailed on taxpayer dollars. And so the county has had to shell out dollar after dollar after dollar for years until this misdemeanor bail reform rolled around in 2019 and said, we have to prioritize releasing people arrested for these low-level crimes, and we have to actually get them in front of a judge and decide what is appropriate for them. That means that people were getting out much faster because they're facing very low-level charges. Since they got out faster, it not only saved them money directly, but it also saved the system net large a lot of money. And because of that, taxpayers are ultimately saving millions of dollars.
Yeah, we don't have to support them.
Report that it's saving a third of the costs associated with the misdemeanor system altogether.
Wow. Okay, let's go to part two, reduced rearrests. So people that are let out with no bail are coming back on their own recognizance and in the meantime not committing other crimes. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, that's what the data has been showing. So this independent monitor has been watching these cases ever since this reform happened. And despite rhetoric that has suggested people are committing other crimes once out, we're actually seeing a 5% decrease since before the reform took place in 2019 of people getting rearrested for a new offense and that's counting up to 3 years after their case is done.
Well, it makes sense. If I say I had to pay $1,000 bail to get out, well, now I need money. So I might be tempted to steal some bread to feed my family or do whatever I need to do to get that money. But without owing it.
I think in general, what we're discovering is that you also if you invest in helping people get back to court and not adding these burdens to their lives, and it's not just the money you pay for the bail, it's also how your life can get disrupted while you're inside jail trying to gather that money. You can lose your job, you can lose your family, you can lose your housing. All of that creates extraordinary burdens on people that might lead to going and committing new crime. This bail reform is bypassing all of that and allowing people to go straight back into their lives right away. And so all of that contributes.
So, Nicole, we're talking about the positives of this, and this looks like it's moving us in the right direction. But are there still areas where the reforms could use a little more improvement or, unintended consequences that policymakers need to be also looking out for?
Well, I think what we've really discovered about this particular reform is being able to look at the data for all of these years afterwards has been extraordinarily helpful in helping us figure out the best approaches for pretrial systems everywhere. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, this reform has lacked because there's no formal way to be able to find that the reform is being followed. So if a court violates it, there's no formal way to find out that they're violating it. And there's also what we have heard anecdotally is that some people are still showing up at their sort of first bail hearings without counsel, which this reform should be making sure that they get. So while we've had vast improvement on that front, it's not 100% yet. And so there are ways that these reforms could be better, but thank goodness we have the data to even know.
So this has been a Texas initiative, this bail reform, correct? It's been for the whole state.
So this reform is Harris County specific, and it is has come because of a settlement through a lawsuit around bail schedules not really being constitutional in the county, which resulted in a settlement of sort of agreed upon changes for the county to take on, which they did starting in 2019, and they've been collecting the data ever since.
So will other cities in Texas take this initiative? If it's working for us.
So. On the state level, the legislature has really been tackling this issue quite a bit, but they've been very focused on increasing preventative detention altogether. In some ways, this goes hand in hand because it's also saying cash isn't doing it, but it's also really much more focused on how you can protect pretrial liberty when people are still legally innocent by embracing ways to help ensure they come back to court and really understanding how to create that system better. So I am hopeful that the state legislature that's been very interested in bail for recent years will really learn about how Harris County has done it really well and try to make that statewide.
Yeah. And that's kind of my question as well, is how do you see this, these reforms fitting into the bigger picture of the criminal justice reform nationwide? When we're looking at this just from Harris County, given our size, how could it be scaled to help others?
I mean, Harris County could be the 25th state in the union based on population. I mean, really, we're a state. Yeah. So I would think Harris County would be an excellent example for the rest of the country.
And it often is. Honestly, we talk to policymakers across the country at local levels, at state levels, and we often lift up Harris County, partly because it actually collected the data to demonstrate its success in a way that other cities didn't really invest in that data collection. But what we know is that it's extraordinary success coming out of it and coming out of it consistently since 2019. So we're quite hopeful that policymakers have shown a lot of interest in doing what Harris County has been doing and has been doing really successfully. And we're here to help them do that.
Well, we've been getting several comments on YouTube, and Chef Rob points out all capitals, most people don't want to be in the system. Once is more than enough. Are you finding that to be true, or are we finding fewer two-time offenders than we used to?
What we are finding is that most of the people aren't coming straight back, right? When you make sure that preventative detention and pretrial incarceration isn't going to ruin people's lives, they can really stay out of the system altogether. And so it's really amazing to see that kind of change and the ways that it impacts the future over and over and over. And we really see investing in these kinds of changes can help not only individuals' lives, but the community writ large.
Are they coming back to face the judge and go through the system? Do they have ankle monitors to make sure we know where they are when we let them go? Or we just trust them to come back?
So everybody's getting a tailored bail hearing to determine the best way to tackle it. The reform asks that there be an emphasis on asking people to come back and just making sure that we let them know about every single case along the way or hearing along the way so that they know when to show up and what to do when they get there. And otherwise, to try to exhaust non-financial needs before you go into something else. And so people are getting different reactions, but the idea is that money shouldn't be the thing that forces them to stay inside. And so it's a bit of a variation, but it's a variation that's still working quite well to avoid that financial burden for both the individual, their families, and the taxpayers.
And so when we look at, this reform where we're moving away from cash bail, especially for low-level offenses, I would imagine that there are, bail bondsmen and the bail industry that are kind of against this type of data and saying that, well, that's just one report. What do you say to the people that are lobbying for cash bail?
Well, I would question their motivations.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense if your entire industry and business is built off of being able to get a profit from folks, right? And I think it's going to harm their bottom line. And so their motivation is a little biased. And so we should think about that when we hear who's suggesting what works and what doesn't work. What I know across the country beyond this particular report is that bail reforms at where they have collected data and where we're able to prove their successes really consistently show these kinds of successes come out. Occasionally you hear of some counter report, and once you look at the methodology of those reports, it comes into a lot of holes. And so I think really questioning who's speaking, what their motivation is always useful. And that's one of the situations where I would consider that.
I don't know much about bail bondsmen.
I don't either.
I mean, well,
but I would imagine.
I wasn't implying that you do. No. But the question. So this is the question I want to ask: were low-level offenses? Was that sort of the bread and butter of bail? Mm-hmm. That there were always plenty of those on a Saturday night, because you're not going to have a murder every Monday, right? So there's always going to be mid and high-level offenses. So the low level, I would think, would be kind of an easy way to make money.
It's really fascinating. Misdemeanors in general across the country are almost missing data because they happen so frequently that we don't have a really good ability to track all of it. I think Harris County, because of its misdemeanor bail reform, has been really innovative in even paying a lot of attention to all of it. So generally, I would say, I mean, the amounts are lower, but there's so much more of it. And so probably a good amount of that bread, with butter being the rest, I suppose.
Yeah. Could you just, I'm not a lawyer either, so low-level offenses, are we just talking about misdemeanors?
Yeah. So in this case, we're talking about misdemeanors, and it's not across the board every misdemeanor. It's every misdemeanor has to have that tailored hearing with an emphasis on release. And so some people facing misdemeanors may still get some cash bail, but every misdemeanor has to get the benefit of that tailored hearing.
And does this have to be your first offense in order to get the no cash bail? Or could it be your second or third or fifth offense?
I think it's for every misdemeanor charge. And then at that hearing, they usually consider whether this is your first or not.
So, Nicole, just so we get a better understanding of your actual organization, talk to us about the role that you all play in supporting counties or individuals during this type of transitions when you're looking at changing something, for example, moving away from cash bail.
So the Bail Project is a national nonprofit organization that provides free bail assistance and community-based pretrial support to thousands of low-income folks across the country every year. We take our very localized understandings of how the pretrial system works in different counties, including our Harris County work previously, and compare them to each other. Our policy team is then able to really put out a clear sense of how pretrial systems work across the country, what solutions we know from our clients and from our work to help them get back to court when money isn't on the line, back into a policy that can really think through how to make the entire pretrial system fair, how to make it equitable, and how to make it safe for everyone. And so this is one example of how we keep track of what happened, where we were, what was going on, keep track of the data that continues to come out, and then go to Texas lawmakers, to other lawmakers across the country, and start talking about ways in which we can make the entire system, not just this one county system, fairer and safer.
Well, and I like that word fair, because we've talked about money and savings, but at the end of the day, the whole bail system does discriminate against those who can't afford it versus somebody who goes in, pays the bail, and gets out.
And somebody making money off of somebody at some of their lowest points.
Yes. So it's, and you've said the word fair more than twice. So I think at the end, that's really, I think, probably the greatest justice we're seeing.
I think it's certainly a huge part of it. And one of the things that this report even lifts up is that the disparities of who was released and who wasn't, whether it be by sex, by race, by ethnicity, have actually been tackled by this as well. Now we're seeing that releases are actually evenly split between all of those groups. And that's fantastic to see. And that's the dream and the hope of all of us, to make that system as fair as possible while maintaining public safety, which this report is proving we're doing in Harris County.
Keep us posted.
Keep us posted. Nicole Zayas Manzano is the Deputy Director of Policy at the Bail Project. Nicole, it's always great to have you join us on Hello Houston.
Thank you so much.
Have
a great day.
Yep.
Coming up, a local library turns 100 years old. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Media is licensed to the University of Houston system, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro Fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
Support comes from the Houston Symphony performing Grieg's Peer Gynt, brought to life by actors on stage, plus music by Jean Sibelius and William Grant Still. Conducted by Dima Slobodenyuk, March 27th through 29th at Jones Hall, houstonsymphony.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine. Baylor's work centers on advancing health and medicine through research, education, and patient care.
And now back to Hello Houston. To get your comment in on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Celeste Diaz Sherman and Frank Billingsley.
All right, this year marks the 100th anniversary of one of Houston's most unique and iconic cultural landmarks, the Julia Ideson Library. Opened to the public in 1926 as the Houston Public Library's Central Library, this landmark's L-shaped layout reflected head librarian Julia Ideson's desire for the building, which included flexible rooms, good ventilation for what other than Houston's weather, and lots of windows for natural light. In 1951, the library was renamed in her honor and today houses one of the most comprehensive urban history archives in the United States. To tell us more about the legacy of the library, the history, and how it's celebrating this remarkable milestone, we welcome Nick Sawicki, Executive Director of the Houston Public Library Foundation. Nick, welcome to Hello Houston.
Frank, Celeste, great to be with you. Thank you.
It's a fabulous building.
Oh, it's amazing.
It is truly. Tell us about it.
There's nothing like it in the state of Texas, and I bet probably nowhere else really in the United States. It's a purely Spanish Renaissance-style building plopped right in the middle of downtown Houston. And the whole point of it is to embrace people. It's a warm welcome when you walk in. It's something beautiful that's for each of us. And not only is it beautiful aesthetically, it's beautiful in what it represents, which is that each of us have the opportunity to learn, to grow, to discover, to build, because the Houston Public Library is designed to support each of us in that way.
So then talk to us about who it's named after.
Oh, Julia Ideson was a remarkable woman in the life of Houston's history, really Texas history.
Yeah.
She was a civic leader. She was a suffragette. She was an anti-segregationist. She was a veteran. She went over in the First World War.
Give us the dates of her life.
Sure. She was born around 1882, came to Houston in 1903. She was hired as the first librarian to launch the Houston Public Library, which opened in 1904.
Which library science had just started.
It really had. She was one of the first. I think she was the first graduating class.
Yeah, from UT.
From UT.
So she was a college, grad.
She was a college grad, and which not totally unusual for women in library sciences at the time, but totally unique. I mean, I would say is for women generally at the time to be able to have that opportunity, and in Texas.
So go ahead. So she comes to Houston.
So she comes to Houston, and she just takes the bull by the horns. It's rodeo season. You got to have the reference, right?
I like it. Yeah, I like it, Nick.
When she comes to Houston, Houston's about 40,000 people. By the time she dies in 1945, it's 400,000 people. She has built the largest operating library system in the state of Texas in about a 40-year period, 43 years. She has built something that to this day serves 2.4 million people every year who visit the library.
Wow.
Her legacy lives through every person who visits the library, and that's why we're so thrilled to be able to celebrate the centennial of a building that she had so much of a say in designing and working in and living in every day.
Well, we were talking, let's put this in perspective. Back in her day, we barely had the telephone.
That's right.
We barely had the telegraph. So what we had, we didn't have internet. We didn't have, rapid cell phones and texting. We had libraries. They were the internet for people. If you wanted information, you went to the library.
That's right. And, she was so focused on making sure we had the top technology available to the people of Houston. So when the first library opens in 1904, the Carnegie Library at the corner of McKinney and Travis.
Which was beautiful.
It was a gorgeous Italian Renaissance building in its own right. They outgrew it within a year.
Wow.
They were so overwhelmed.
So give us the book count versus then and then later.
So that first year, that library had about 150,000 books in it. By the time they closed it in 1926 and moved everything over, they were trying to stuff 300,000, 400,000 books in it. The new Ideson Library was built for about 800,000 books. When they closed it as the Central Library in 1976, there were about 1.4 million shoved into it.
Wow.
So it was bursting at the seams. I can't figure out how they fit everything.
Well, so bring us into 2026. How has the role of the library evolved and changed from when it first opened its doors in 1996?
Can you still get a card, Nick?
You can absolutely still get a library card. Visit any branch, any of the 6 days of the week they're open, you can get a card. Frank, do you have one?
I don't.
Oh, we can fix that.
Oh, gosh.
And
Frank, anytime I move anywhere, that's the first thing I do is get my library card.
I heard you haven't visited the Ideson building yet.
I haven't.
I've been there.
We have to fix that.
We're going to fix that, for
sure. Yeah, we thought about throwing a wedding there. A lot of weddings. How many weddings a year?
We do about 80 weddings a year
80
now.
weddings a year, and there are only 52 weekends, so
52
that's a lot.
weekends, and all that money goes back into preserving the building.
Well, may I ask how much it is to throw a wedding? I know it's capped at about 200 to 300 people.
Right. It depends on how much of the building you rent out, but it basically fluctuates from $4,000 to $8,000.
Okay.
It's not a huge cost.
But it's not a venue that's going to close on you. We report those
That's
a
right.
lot. You hear
That's
about
right.
all these brides and grooms, they have their venue closed and their money is not returned.
We've never left a bride and a groom, stuck at the gates trying to get in. So, and that's not happening anytime soon. But Celeste, I do want to answer your question about the mission of the library. The mission of the library, when people think of the library, they think of books.
Right.
And books are really important. And it's a big part of what the library still does. It circulated 2.5 million books last year. 3.4 million books and another 5 million ebooks. So we have over a 9 million item circulation going through the system each year. And we see it creeping up, but it's not about books. It's about people. Mm-hmm. The purpose of the Houston Public Library is lifelong learning. Mm-hmm. It is the ability to connect people with the information and the resources necessary for them to build their lives and to build their communities and to grow and expand their imaginations. And the investments we make in children in particular, who continue to be one of the largest segments served by the library and always have been. Physical reading material increases neuroplasticity, retention, and comprehension, and attention. Mm-hmm. If you get physical materials into the hands of kids early on, we have a program called 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. If you can get a kid to read 1,000 books before kindergarten, their chances of success skyrocket.
Wait, how many books before kindergarten?
It's only 1,000, Frank.
Wow. I used to get a nickel every time I read a book over the summer.
Well, look at that. You could make, $50?
They really are. Libraries, public libraries, really are community hubs.
They are.
And they are sometimes the first introduction to young children to books, seeing books where they don't have to pay for it.
That's right. That's right. I mean, books are expensive, like everything else. And each year, the library continues to provide free books, free services across the board. We had 12,000 events and programs last year, 247,000 attendees, all of it free.
Well, libraries give you that hug. The stacks, as you say, this one is beautiful, and they're quiet generally. They just are a very calming, almost zen place to go.
It's a unique place.
Tell me about the research that goes on there.
That's something we're really proud of. So in 1976, when the Julia Ideson building stopped being the central library and everything moved to the Jones building across the Barbara Bush Plaza, it became what is now the Houston History Research Center. And the center has 5,000 years of physical history in it. We have everything dating back to ancient Sumeria, to the Renaissance, the medieval period. You name it, we have something of it. It's really cool.
You're kidding. I would never have guessed that.
Do you want to guess the oldest thing we have?
The oldest thing you have, you said Sumeria. I would guess some hieroglyphics.
We do. We have, it's a receipt for a gazelle. It's about the size of an oversized Triscuit. And I'm pleased to say that gazelles, the cost of one has not gone up with inflation too much over 5,000 years. But it is. We have that.
What country? Was it Egyptian?
It would be Mesopotamia.
From Mesopotamia. Okay.
Yeah. And so, but what goes on now is that the center is extremely focused on Houston and Texas history. And so we have letters dating back to the Republic from Sam Houston and Mirabeau Lamar and General Bagby, Thomas Bagby.
Captain Jesse Billingsley, maybe?
Perhaps. We'll have to check
I'll tell you about him.
I look forward to it. But that research today continues to support thousands of researchers and scholars who visit the site every year to engage in that research in a really professional setting in a meaningful way.
And so what do you think if Julia Ideson could see the library, walk through it today? What do you think she'd be most proud of?
I think she'd be proud of the fact that Houstonians continue to invest in their library. The library doesn't exist in Houston or most American cities without private citizens getting together and saying, we deserve a library for the betterment of our community. Really? And that's what happened here. The Ladies' Reading Club got together and privately petitioned Andrew Carnegie for the funds. And he wrote this, well, he didn't write it. His secretary wrote it saying, Dear Mrs. Kendall, for whom there's a branch named on the west side of town, Mr. Carnegie thinks Houston is deserving of a library. The funds are forthcoming. And so, but it's private citizens who come together. And I think Julia Ideson would be really proud of the fact that that legacy is so uniquely entwined with Houstonians, everyday Houstonians saying, yes, we want a library, we deserve a library, we're going to invest in it. And at the Library Foundation, which I have the privilege of overseeing, we see that every day, people literally making investments in the services and programs of the library.
So would she have seen any more branches, or did that happen after she passed?
Most of the branches developed came in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
So after she
died, yeah, she died in 45.
And so where are we in the library system today? With, of course, that main library, and then there's branches near me at Wesleyan and Westheimer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when Julia Ideson died, there were about 5 or 6 branch libraries. We're now at 32 branch and regional libraries. But the library also has 2 unique other sections of its services. We have the History Research Centers. Not only do we have the one at the Ideson Building, we have the African American History Research Center in the 2nd Ward.
But she was very instrumental in getting libraries and books to that community back even in the teens and 20s.
She was a really committed anti-segregationist, and she fought the city of Houston when it created a separate colored Carnegie Library with funding from Andrew Carnegie separately. So, continuing that part of the legacy is really important to us, too, because it's such a substantial part of the Houston community that really deserves to be preserved and celebrated. We also are really lucky to have one of the most substantial family history research libraries, our genealogical library in the Museum District in the country. It's a massive resource for the community. And we're opening the 4th History Research Center next year in the Hispanic History Research Center, which will open in the Turkey Bend development on the East End.
So that kind of really is where you have to go. I mean, with the internet and so much online, you can't see that little Triscuit receipt for that.
That's right.
For the gazelle back in the day, right? I mean, you have to go and physically look at some of this.
There's nothing like holding the material in your hand because there's engaging with history and then there's feeling history. And you can do that through the Houston Public Library because it's not the libraries, it's all of ours, right? It's kept in stewardship for every Houstonian who wants to understand and appreciate and learn from their past so we can move forward together.
So, Nick, what does the next 100 years look like for the library and Houston Public Libraries more broadly?
Oh, goodness. That's a great question. Well, Houston continues to grow. And that means the library is going to continue to have to make investments in technology and in space. We recently launched, the library recently launched the Tech Link Centers, which are free podcast studios, video studios, music studios. We have 4 of those up and running, the opening the 5th sometime in the next year. And it just means meeting people where they're at, because that's the point of the library, right? That's what the Julia Ideson building embodies, a flexible model that meets the needs of the people where they are.
Nicholas Sawicki is the executive director of the Houston Public Library Foundation. Nicholas, thank you so much.
Yeah, it doesn't just have to be a wedding, right? We could have like a frat party there.
Yes.
See?
Within reason.
If somebody wants to maybe learn more about Houston Public Library systems, where can they go, Nick?
It's very easy. Just go online and visit houstonlibrary.org, and you can find every service and every book available to you right there.
She'd be proud of what you're doing there.
Yes. And
Julia,
that brings us to the end of our show. It was a good one. Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. We want to thank you for watching.
Yeah, guess who we have tomorrow?
Who do we have tomorrow?
Brian Ching.
I can't wait.
I know. He's
going
to tell us all about FIFA and what he's doing.
Oh, and that's coming
and
very
his induction.
quickly.
I know.
Yep.
He's a hero.
So we'll be back tomorrow with more conversations. We're also going to be joined by former Houston Dynamo. This is News 88.7. Have a great rest of your day, Houston.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Your support for Houston Public Media powers the programs you trust and rely on. And your employer may help your contribution go even further. Many employers